Story number 1. Relief rotation. I arrived at Summit Station 7 on November 12th to relieve the outgoing meteorologist and conduct the standard winter equipment audit before the access road closed for the season. The drive-up had taken 6 hours, the last 40 minutes on deteriorating Forest Service roads that would be impassable within 2 weeks. Regional headquarters had emphasized the importance of completing the audit quickly. After mid-November, the station would be accessible only by snowmobile or helicopter until April. Dr. Kellerman was scheduled to brief me on the equipment status and operational quirks specific to this installation. When I arrived at 3 in the afternoon, his vehicle was gone. The station was unlocked. I found his handover notes on the desk, thorough and properly formatted, along with his final week of manual logs. Everything appeared in order. His personal effects remained throughout the living quarters, toiletries in the bathroom, clothing in the bedroom closet, his winter coat hanging on the hook by the main door. I noted this in my initial report as an oversight, assuming he had been eager to leave and would arrange retrieval of his belongings. The first 2 days proceeded normally. I familiarized myself with the instrument array, verified calibration on the primary sensors, and began the systematic inspection of backup systems. The station maintained weather data for aviation routing and regional forecasting. The work was routine. I had operated similar installations in Montana and Vermont. On the second night, I woke at 2:30 in the morning without clear reason. I checked my phone, no alerts, no messages. The station was silent except for the normal sounds of wind against the structure and the quiet hum of electronics in the operations room. I went to check the instruments out of habit. The barometric pressure reading on the digital display showed 972 millibars. I checked my log from 3 hours earlier, 1013 millibars. I pulled up the historical data. The drop had occurred over 40 minutes beginning at 2:17. I opened the satellite weather overlay on the workstation. No storm systems within 300 miles, no frontal boundaries. I stepped outside. The sky was clear, stars visible, wind minimal. I went back inside and filed an instrument malfunction report, flagging the barometer and requesting guidance on whether to switch to the backup unit. The response came 6 hours later. Regional telemetry showed they had received the same pressure readings I had logged manually. Their systems indicated no malfunction. They asked if I had observed any corresponding weather changes. I confirmed I had not. On November 14th, I began noticing the anemometer data. Wind speed readings cycled in a pattern, rising from near calm to 18 knots over 6 minutes, then dropping back to calm over the next 6 minutes. The pattern repeated exactly 4 times, then stopped. This occurred only during the early morning hours. I watched it happen in real time at 2:23, standing at the operations room window, looking at trees that were not moving. I submitted a second malfunction report. Regional confirmed again that their telemetry matched my manual observations. They suggested I perform a full recalibration of the anemometer array. I completed the recalibration that afternoon. The instruments tested within acceptable parameters. On November 15th, I went out to the equipment shed to inspect the backup generator. Fresh snow had fallen during the night, approximately 3 inches. I saw boot prints leading from the station's side door to the shed and back. The tracks were recent, made in snow that had stopped falling around 5 in the morning, according to my log. I had been inside the entire time since midnight, running diagnostics on the data transmission system. I checked the access log on the station door. No entries except my own exit at 9:45 to walk to the shed. The tread pattern matched my boots. I compared them carefully. Same size, same wear pattern on the left heel. That evening, I searched Dr. Kellerman's remaining belongings, trying to determine if he had left emergency contact information. In the drawer of the desk, beneath the standard operations manual, I found a log entry written in his hand on a loose sheet of paper. It was dated November 10th, 2 days before my arrival. The entry described barometric pressure drops occurring between 217 and 243 each morning over a period of 5 days. He noted anemometer readings that cycled in exact intervals despite calm observed conditions. He wrote that he had decided to walk the station perimeter during the phenomenon to check for localized atmospheric effects not captured by the instruments. The entry ended mid-sentence. I filed no report about this document. The pressure drops continued each night. I began staying awake to observe them. At 2:17, the barometer would begin falling. I would go outside immediately. The air felt normal, temperature consistent with the thermometer readings, no wind, no precipitation. By 2:43, the readings would stabilize and return to expected levels. On November 18th, I attempted the emergency shutdown procedure during the event, following the protocol for severe instrument failure. The shutdown sequence required 12 minutes to complete. The phenomenon stopped at 2:43 as always, before I reached the final step. I maintained the station through November 22nd, my scheduled relief date. I submitted standard meteorological reports only, each one properly formatted and containing no mention of the anomalies. On November 23rd, I contacted regional headquarters and requested immediate transfer, citing personal circumstances that required my return to the main office. I did not specify the circumstances. They approved the request without questions. I drove down the access road on November 24th. The first snow closure was scheduled for November 26th. I left Dr. Kellerman's belongings where I had found them, including his winter coat by the door. 3 weeks later, I received amended assignment documentation indicating that Summit Station 7 had been reclassified for automated monitoring only as part of a system-wide modernization initiative. My personnel file showed an early departure date of November 20th due to equipment upgrade requirements. The station is no longer staffed during winter months. My field notes from the assignment were archived under standard retention protocols and marked for administrative access only. Story number 2. Dam inspection. I arrived at Cougar Basin Dam at 0600 hours on the 14th of November to conduct a routine quarterly inspection of the lower maintenance tunnels. Facility Supervisor Derek Hollis met me at the security checkpoint with the access logs and structural blueprints. We descended to level 3 in silence. The air smelled like wet concrete and machine oil. I carried standard assessment tools, laser rangefinder, moisture meter, digital caliper, and a tablet loaded with the dam's original construction specifications from 1978. At level 3, subsection B, we documented hairline fractures in the concrete near drainage valve cluster. 9. I photographed each crack and measured the widths with the caliper. The fractures were consistent with normal settling. Nothing in the patterns suggested structural compromise. I entered the measurements into the maintenance log while Hollis held the flashlight steady. He mentioned that third shift operators had reported unusual acoustic readings from the lower levels over the past 11 days. I asked what kind of readings. He said low-frequency vibrations that didn't correspond to turbine operation or water flow. He attributed them to seasonal water pressure variations. I noted his statement in the log, but did not flag it for follow-up. We moved into Corridor 3C at 0715. The corridor ran parallel to the primary spillway and terminated at a maintenance alcove approximately 60 meters from the entry point. I had inspected this section twice before. The walls were smooth, poured concrete with conduit housings every 10 meters. Hollis walked ahead while I took moisture readings near the floor. The readings were normal. At 0720, I used the laser rangefinder to verify the corridor length for the updated digital plans. The device returned a measurement of 98.3 meters to the far wall. I checked the rangefinder display twice. I consulted the blueprints on the tablet. The corridor was marked as 61.5 meters in total length. I recalibrated the rangefinder and took another measurement. 98.7 meters. I asked Hollis to stop walking. He did not respond. I called his name twice. He continued forward into the section of corridor that should not have existed. I used a tape measure to manually verify the distance. I anchored the tape at the corridor entrance and walked the line to the far wall. The tape extended to 97 meters before I reached the alcove. The physical space exceeded the dam's exterior dimensions by at least 38 meters. I rechecked the blueprints. The exterior wall of the dam was clearly marked. The corridor could not extend beyond it without breaching the outer structure into open air and the reservoir face. Hollis stood at the far end near the alcove. He was facing the wall. I called for him to return to the entry point. He did not acknowledge me. I followed to maintain visual contact per safety regulations. As I approached, I saw that the alcove contained a valve assembly identical to Drainage Cluster 9. The valve was not present in any of the maintenance documentation I had reviewed. The wheel was painted the same industrial yellow as the primary valves. Stenciled on the wall above it was the designation C9X. I heard water moving behind the wall. The sound was heavier than the normal flow through the drainage system. It suggested a large, unmapped reservoir space. I attempted radio contact with surface operations. I pressed the transmit button and identified myself. The response was my own voice reading back the status report I had transmitted 14 minutes earlier when we entered subsection B. I released the button and tried again. The same recording played. My voice described the hairline fractures and gave the time as 0653. I switched channels. The recording continued on every frequency. Hollis reached for the valve wheel. I told him to stop. He placed both hands on the wheel and began turning it counterclockwise. I crossed the remaining distance and physically restrained him by the shoulders. He did not resist. His eyes were open, but he did not appear to register my presence. I pulled him away from the valve and initiated emergency evacuation. I guided him back toward the corridor entrance. He walked without protest but did not speak. At approximately 40 meters from the alcove, the corridor walls became familiar again. The conduit housings resumed their 10-meter intervals. I checked the rangefinder. The distance to the entry point measured 31 meters. When I looked back toward the alcove, the extended section was no longer visible. The corridor terminated at the standard 61.5 meters. The alcove with the undocumented valve was not there. I brought Hollis to the surface at 0751. I reported a possible gas leak in level 3 and requested medical evaluation for both of us. The facility manager initiated ventilation protocols and sealed the lower tunnels. Hollis was unresponsive to questioning. He was transported to the county medical center at 0830. I provided a written statement describing structural disorientation and possible carbon monoxide exposure. A hazmat team swept level 3 that afternoon. They found no gas leaks and no carbon monoxide. Air quality readings were normal. I was asked to accompany a secondary team into Corridor 3C the following morning. I agreed. The corridor measured 61.5 meters. The alcove contained no valve assembly beyond the standard drainage cluster. 9. I was shown the original construction photographs from 1978. The corridor had not been modified since initial completion. Hollis was placed on medical leave for psychological evaluation. He did not return to work. I was reassigned to desktop assessments pending my own evaluation. The appointment was scheduled for the 9th of December but was postponed without explanation. It has not been rescheduled. The incident was classified as environmental disorientation due to confined space conditions and low-light visual distortion. The report was filed under administrative review and restricted to supervisory access. I have not been contacted for follow-up. My security clearance for on-site dam inspections was suspended on the 3rd of January. The suspension remains in effect. The case file was transferred to archives on the 18th of February and marked as closed. Story number 3, Transit Monitor. I was assigned to overnight systems monitoring at the Philadelphia S.E. Peter Control Center in late September of 2023. My shift ran from 11 in the evening until 7 in the morning, 4 nights per week. The work consisted of watching camera feeds and track sensors across 47 stations during the maintenance window between 2 and 5 in the morning when passenger service was suspended. The control room was a windowless space on the second floor of the Market Street Administrative Building. I shared it with one other monitor during peak hours, but after midnight I worked alone. 3 walls of screens showed platform feeds, tunnel sensors, and system diagnostics. I had a radio, a logbook, and a direct line to the night operations manager. At 2:38 on the morning of September 26th, camera 12 at Girard Station showed a passenger on the northbound platform. I noted this immediately because the last train had cleared at 2:06 and all entrance gates registered locked in the system. The figure stood near the far end of the platform, facing the tracks. I could not determine age or gender from the angle, only that they wore dark clothing and remained completely still. I followed standard procedure and radioed the overnight security supervisor to dispatch a patrol. I logged the observation with timestamp and camera designation. The security supervisor confirmed receipt and said he would send someone within 15 minutes. At 2:43, the figure had not moved. I zoomed the camera as far as the equipment allowed, but the resolution at that distance was poor. The figure appeared to be standing with arms at their sides, approximately 2 feet from the platform edge. Security called back at 2:51 and reported the platform empty. I asked them to confirm they were at Girard northbound, and they confirmed. I told them the figure was still visible on my monitor. There was a pause. Then the security officer said he was standing in the center of the platform and could see both ends clearly. No one was present. I looked at my screen. The figure remained in the same position. Now there were 3 others standing along the yellow safety line, spaced at even intervals. All faced the tracks. All were motionless. I asked security to remain on site while I cycled through adjacent cameras. The southbound platform was empty. The mezzanine level showed no movement. The street-level entrance gates were closed and chained. I returned to camera 12. 4 figures now, standing in a row. I requested maintenance check the Girard camera array for malfunction or playback error. The security officer said he would wait for maintenance to arrive before clearing the scene. At 3:09, maintenance called to say they were entering Girard Station. I watched camera 12. The 4 figures stood motionless. Maintenance appeared on the mezzanine camera at 3:12, descended to platform level at 3:14. The maintenance technician's voice came over the radio. He said he was standing on the northbound platform and it was empty. I told him I had visual on 4 individuals on the tracks themselves now, just beyond the platform edge. He said he was looking at the tracks and saw nothing. I asked him to wave at the camera. On my monitor, I watched him wave. Behind him, 7 figures now stood on the tracks in a line parallel to the platform. The maintenance technician was less than 10 feet from the nearest one. I contacted the night operations manager per protocol. He arrived at my station at 3:31 and stood behind my chair, looking at the monitor. I pointed to the figures on the tracks. He was quiet for a moment, then asked me to switch to a different camera and back. I cycled to camera 11, which showed the Girard southbound platform empty, then returned to camera 12. The 7 figures remained visible, standing motionless on the tracks. The maintenance technician had moved closer to the tunnel entrance and was examining something on the wall. The night operations manager asked if I had been feeling unwell. I said I had not. He asked if I had taken any medication or consumed anything unusual during my shift. I said I had not. He told me to switch camera 12 to record and save the file to the incident folder, then advised me to file an equipment malfunction report. He said he would contact the technical systems contractor in the morning. I asked if he saw the figures on my monitor. He said he saw an empty platform and a maintenance worker. I asked him to look again. He looked at the screen for several seconds, then said he saw only what he had described and that I should complete the malfunction report before end of shift. He left the control room at 3:48. I remained at my station and continued monitoring all feeds per standard procedure. The figures on camera 12 did not move. I counted them several times to be certain. 7 figures standing on the northbound tracks at Girard Station, visible only on my monitor. At 4:17, maintenance cleared the scene and reported no technical issues found. Camera 12 continued to function normally according to their diagnostic equipment. At 4:42, the figures moved. All 7 turned in unison toward the tunnel entrance and walked forward in a line, disappearing into the darkness beyond the platform lighting. Camera 12 went to static at 4:43. I logged the static error and attempted to reset the feed remotely. The camera did not respond. At 5:06, camera 12 restored automatically and showed an empty platform. I noted this in my log. I completed my shift at 600 hours. I submitted the required incident documentation, including the recorded file from camera 12 and my detailed observation log. I noted the discrepancy between my visual confirmation and the reports from security and maintenance personnel on site. The documentation was received by the Night Operations Manager and forwarded to the Infrastructure Assessment Review Committee. I was told the matter would be investigated as a potential equipment malfunction with possible electromagnetic interference affecting the monitor display in the control room. On October 2nd, I received notice of transfer to Daytime Administrative Operations, effective October 9th. The transfer was described as a lateral move to better utilize my organizational skills in a customer service support role. I was required to sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding all overnight monitoring observations prior to my reassignment. The incident file was classified under technical anomaly and archived in the Infrastructure Assessment Review database. I was informed that the committee had concluded the event was caused by a temporary malfunction in the control room display system since corrected. No further investigation was deemed necessary. I have not worked an overnight monitoring shift since my transfer.